Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, 3rd of March, 2021. Greetings to the 12 tribes of the seed of Jacob, whose name was changed to Yashar'al or Israel, scattered into the four corners of the earth through slavery and captivity. Greetings. Greetings also to those who, through the Hebrew Messiah, who we call Yahushua, who the Bible also calls Jesus Christ, the Hebrew Messiah of the tribe of Judah, and through him, those that are not of the seed of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, but want to be grafted in to that olive tree. In righteousness and truth, greetings to you. Greetings also to those that are not of any particular religion, but are seeking righteousness and truth in these last days of the age of this system. Greetings. Double blessings on those that work to help save lives in the healthcare field and care for older people and people that are sick, oftentimes at the sacrifice of themselves. Greetings also to those who pick up garbage and to those that make deliveries for very little wages for the benefit of many. Benefit of many. Greetings also to those who are working actively to try to rescue little boys, little girls, and teenagers from sex trade operations and sex slavery, of which there's a multi-billion-dollar business on the earth today. Greetings to those and blessings that are trying to rescue those children, and curses upon those that support such an industry. Finally, blessings and double blessings and greetings to those that are working on behalf of people that have no roof over their head, that are homeless, and that are working to get roofs over their head and food and shelter for these people that are represented in the United States. Is at least 500,000 men, women, and children, and that's not including all the other countries of the earth where this does exist. Blessings upon those that are working on their behalf and on those people that are homeless, and may the Most High return soon with his Son and provide them eternal homes, which they would never be homeless again. Today is Wednesday, as I mentioned. Greetings also, Junior. Greetings to anyone coming in the chat. We're going to study today. I've been convicted to study today what I'm going to call standards of righteousness. Standards of righteousness. Very, very important in these last days. We understand, as we've been studying the book of Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12. We were studying Revelation, in fact, and we're in we're going to be going into chapter 14 by the grace of the Most High on Friday. But we have studied 13 chapters of the book of Revelation. And one of the things we came to the conclusion to understand that there is a war in the spiritual world. There's a war in the spiritual world between good and evil. Okay? There's a war in the spiritual world between good and evil. Good is represented in the Bible as the Father Yah, the creator of all things, the only true God, and his Son Messiah. Evil is represented by his enemy, which is, we call him Asatan, which means the adversary. He is the adversary of righteousness. And these exist in a world, in a dimension of the spirit that human beings just can't see. And yet we see the playing out of this war every day in multiple ways. Okay. Shalom, everyone. In the Revelation chapter 12, we see Revelation chapter 12, Revelation 12, verse 9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Asatan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So basically what we're saying here, what the word is telling us here, another name for the devil or Asatan is the dragon. He's also called the dragon. and he deceives the earth. Okay, he deceives the earth. And he is attempting to deceive the earth to a degree that he will cause multiple billions of people to be destroyed. That's what he's going to cause, because Asatan is like this: either he's going to have it or nobody's going to have it. That's the way he feels about it. Either he's going to have this kingdom or he's going to just burn the whole thing down. So he's going to cause billions of people to be destroyed because of his deception. Okay. Now, deception, in a very basic sense, is a lie. It's a misleading. It's an untruth. Now, again, I'm talking today. I want to make this very succinct because I understand, we go into Bible studies, and if you've seen the studies that we did in our ministry, the Raw Hebrew Remnant Ministry, you see that, each video is, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, they're long. And they go into a lot of material. Y'all know that. We go through a lot of material. And sometimes, in this day and age, and I understand people don't want to look at the whole thing, or they look at some of it, or they look at parts of it as days go on. And they can't sometimes pick up everything because there's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of information in there. All taken from the Bible, and anyone that's look at the studies can testify, all taken from the Bible, but it's a lot of information because there's a lot going on. Okay. So with that in mind, I want to make this tonight, by the grace of the Most High, more pointed because it's an important topic. So let's talk about standards in general. Whenever you, like, for example, you have in the earth, there are standards of measurement. For example, in the United States, they use feet and yards. And in other countries, they use meters, right? They use millimeters, centimeters, and meters as standards of measurement. So that when they want to measure something, they're using one of these standards to see what the measurement of it is. If you want to see, like, how many yards, if you're in the United States of America, how many yards is the distance from point A to point B, you're using a yardstick, which is the standard of measurement. And if you were to say it's 100 yards, people are going to say that is true. Why is it true? Because the yardstick is the standard of measurement, and it was used to measure that distance. People like to run 5Ks or walk 5Ks, right? 5 kilometers is equal to 3.68 miles. That way, if somebody is using the mile measurement and they want to do a 5 kilometer, they can go by what they understand as miles and get the kilometer by measuring out 3.68 miles. And say, yes, I just did 5K. Why? Because the standard is 3.68 miles. See? So these are universal standards of measurement that can tell a person if a distance is true. Same with weights. I weigh X number of pounds, or X stone if you're in Europe and UK, right? Or X kilograms. And these say, well, this is true based on what? The standard of measurement. Now, in these particular cases, the people of the earth have gotten together and made these standards of measurement. In the Bible, they use measurements also. They usually use them as cubits or reeds. They say different things, but they're standards of measurement that everyone at that time in that society has agreed upon as the standard. Okay, and everybody goes by that standard. So that if someone was to say to you, I want, they're selling you apples, and I want 5 pounds of apples, they have to have a measurement that shows that it's 5 pounds. If they're charging you 5 pounds and you look at the measurement and it says 3 pounds, you can say, you did not give me 5 pounds of apples. Why? Because the measurement, the standard says 3. So you did not, I asked you for 5 and you said you gave me 5, but it's not true. Because the standard is 5 and it says 3 on your scale. Okay. So in order to understand these things, you need to have a standard. Well, in terms of truth, what is truth? Pilate asked the Messiah, he said, what is truth? Messiah told him, he said, whoever is of the truth, he said, will hear my voice. And Pilate was what was in it, and he was walking away from Messiah. Why was he walking away? Because he was going to tell the religious leaders of the Israelite nation, hey, I find no fault in this man, because Messiah was getting deep. And he said, whoever's of the truth will hear my voice. So, and Pilate walked away asking the question, what is truth? Why? Why? It's because Pilate was a pagan and he had no standard of truth. To Pilate and all the pagans, truth was a philosophy. What is that? That's something that could be argued as to what it is. There's no solid standard for it. There's no solid thing that can say this is truth and this is not. There was no agreement among men that say what is truth. So what did they do? The Romans were in charge at that time, and they told you what truth was based on their own standard. Because why? Because they were the rulers of the earth. They ruled the earth at that time. So they could say, listen, you are guilty, and we're telling you it's true that you're guilty based on our standard of truth. So they said Messiah was guilty of treason because based on their standard, there's only one king, it's Caesar. And if you try to be a king and you're not Caesar, you are guilty of treason. That's their standard of truth. So the Most High has standards. These standards protect his people from deception. Okay, I want to make sure you got me so far. The standards that the Most High Yah of the nation of Israel has protect his people from deception. If those standards are violated, you are no longer on the side of truth, according to the king that we believe is the king of the universe, the Most High Yahweh. Now, as I mentioned to you, we're in a spiritual war, right? We're in a spiritual war according to this word, this standard, which we'll talk more about. According to this, we're in a spiritual war. Okay? And of course, let's look at Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. I'm going to begin at verse 10. I'm going to begin at verse 10 of Ephesians 6. And I'm going to go from verse 10 down to verse 12 of Ephesians chapter 6. Finally, my brethren, be strong in Yahweh and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of Yahweh, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. See? Okay? Spiritual war. You can't see the devil, but the Bible is telling you he exists. All right? Wait. First, I said 10 to 12, right? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. There's a spiritual war. It is raging. It affects every physical thing that happens on the earth. Every physical thing, every last physical activity on earth is affected by the spiritual war that's taking place. Now, as part of this war, the enemy, Satan, the adversary, which is the adversary, that means he's the enemy of Messiah, he's the enemy of Yahweh. He is attacking all the standards. I mean, how else can he have a chance to win the war and deceive the earth unless he attacks the standards? He has to. He has to. Which is why the admonition was given here that we put on the whole armor of Yahweh. that we can withstand the attacks against Yahweh. Okay? So it's important then for us to not only have standards of truth, but it's important not only to have the standards, but to stick closely with those standards. Because if you stick strongly with the standards of truth, you will not be deceived. Because the standards are going to be 100% of the time, 24/7, 365, attacked continually. Let me give you a couple of them so that and that's the point of today. We want to talk about the standards so that we can be able to withstand and to stand firm in this war. Okay? Now, the first standard is the King James Bible. That's the first standard. Okay? Now, why do I say that's the first standard? Well, let me back up for a second. Before even the King James Bible, listen carefully. The first standard really is in the spirit, because the war is in the spirit, correct? If I said we're having a spiritual war, right? Then we must have standards in the spirit. Correct? That makes sense here? I mean, right? So you got to have a standard in the spirit. Okay? Now, according to this word, according to this word, for 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 12. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 12. For our rejoicing is this, the apostle writes to the Corinthian believers, the testimony of our conscience, that in simplicity and godly sincerity, not with fleshly wisdom, but by the grace of Yahweh, we have had our conversation in the world, and more abundantly to you word. So he's saying his conscience bears witness, okay, that he's doing the right thing. And so I always try to admonish everyone under the sound of my voice, get on your knees, because logically speaking, if there's a creator, right? If there's a creator of you and me and everything that exists, this creator has to be greater than us. I mean, if he's the creator, right? So if you don't know who he is, if you're not sure if it's Allah, or if it's the God of the Jehovah Witnesses, or if it's Vishnu, or Buddha, or nature itself. If you just, you don't know. A lot of people don't know, and what they'll say is stuff like this. You'll see this, the universe, because they don't know, right? So they say the universe. What I say to y'all then is, listen, whoever that is, if you don't know who it is, you should approach them and ask them who they are. Because if there is, they will let you know, will they not? You should approach them. You think it's the universe, you think it's a higher power, whatever you want to call it. You need to first humble yourself, because if it's your creator, it's greater than you. That makes sense, yeah? Is that fair? If it's your creator, it's greater than you. Okay? So ask that universe, creator, spirit to show themselves to you. Because why? Because you want to know who they are. Because you want to know what this is all about. And wait for the answer. It may not have come that moment. Because if it's the creator, don't got to answer you just because you asking. But over time, it will show you. And it will bring something to you. I'm bearing witness as to what it brings to you, because I have done what I'm asking you to do. It will bring you, wait for it, conviction. Some people call it conscience. But what I feel it is, and it is a conscience, but it's a conviction. It will bring you conviction. And that spiritual conviction will guide you in your decisions. For example, one time, I used to be a chaplain in a hospital a long time ago in New York. It was called Joint Disease Hospital. They changed the name, I think, to North General or something now, but it was in Harlem. Back in the day, it was called Joint Disease Hospital. And I would meet a lot of people in there because what I was doing in there is I was doing Bible studies with people that was in methadone clinic. Back in the day, I don't know if they still have methadone clinics, but back in the day, hospitals had methadone clinics to help people get off of heroin. Okay. And in New York, especially in Harlem and other areas of New York, especially people where Black people were, there was majorly, heroin addictions. Now they still have heroin addictions, but at that time, that's how they handled it. They would have a methadone clinic. And I would meet a lot of people coming through. Every 10 days, there was a new group of people coming through. Some people because of court, some people because they family or whatever. They every 10 days, there was a different crew of people coming through. Sometimes you see people come through more than once, obviously. But I met a lot of people in the clinic and people in ministry and families of the people that was in the clinic. And I met a man once and he invited me. It was Friday night and he said, we having Sabbath fellowship, on such and such a street. And it was close to, and because I had Friday night, I would go in there and do, Bible studies and preach and teach in the clinic. And this particular Friday night, he said, I'm going to be at this place over here. He said, and I like this brother. He was a good brother. I respected him. So I said, yeah, I'll go with you. So we came and it was in a brownstone in Harlem. It was a brownstone, right? And we were walking up the stairs of the brownstone. And this woman came to the door and she had a veil over her face. And I'm telling you, man, the spirit convicted me at that moment. Get out of there. Don't even walk in the door. And I stopped. And my boy said, what's wrong? You all right? I said, you know what, man? You go ahead. I gotta do something else. I said just like that because I couldn't explain the conviction that I had, but it was heavy. It was heavy on my soul. I felt it. I stopped in my tracks right there and turned around after I said, what I said to him, and I went on my way and went back to my apartment. But that's an example. Sometimes something just doesn't feel right. Something just doesn't feel right. And sometimes something is right, but you don't like it. Like I had a girlfriend. at the time, right? I had been with this girl for 4 years. She was a beautiful young girl. I was a young boy at the time. I think I was 21, 20. She was about the same age as me. She was a beautiful young girl. And my friends liked her. I liked her, obviously. We were together 4 years. But when I surrendered myself to the Most High, at the time I called him God, and I decided I wanted to do what was right, I was strongly convicted that this woman wasn't for me. Strongly convicted. And we ended up breaking up. And she didn't understand it. All I could say to her was there was just something wasn't right. Now, after that, I was hurt, I was hurt. And I went back and visited her a couple of times because I couldn't believe that whatever I was being convicted was correct. I went back and visited her. We had sex because I couldn't believe that me and this girl wasn't supposed to be together. She couldn't either. But one time I left there after I had sex with her. I left the place we were staying and I was convicted even stronger. Leave this girl alone. Leave this girl alone. The reason I believe I was receiving this, brethren, listen, I was asking to be guided by that spirit. I was asking, guide me. because I had enough sense to understand that I didn't know everything and that I could definitely make big mistakes. I had enough sense to understand that. So I said, please guide me. And I was convicted. I mean, I lived about, I say 30 blocks from her in New York. And I walked, I didn't take the subway. I walked because it was so conviction was so heavy on me. I just needed to think and walk. So I got home. And in my apartment, I got down on my knees and I told the Most High, I said, you know what? I want you to pick whoever you want me to be with. And I was dead serious. And it was one of the scariest prayers I ever prayed because I was scared because I was dead serious. I said to the Most High, if you want me to marry nobody and be by myself, I'll do that. If you want me, all right, I'm trying to be real with y'all. Okay. And I'm not hating on nobody. I'm just trying to be real. I grew up and I never dealt with any Caucasian women because I believe this is just how I believe. I'm just telling you, I'm not saying it was right, but I believed it was disrespect to all my sisters to deal with a Caucasian woman. That's how I felt. I was 21. I was raised that way. That's how I felt. But I said in my prayer, even if you want me to marry a white woman, I'll do it. If it's you. That's what I said. And I was dead serious. It was scary, man. But I wanted to know his will, especially he was telling me, leave this girl alone. But conviction was heavy on my heart. Leave this girl alone. So I said, look, whoever it is, as long as I know it's from you, I'll go with her. And if you have nobody for me, you just tell me, be like Paul and don't marry anybody. Don't be with, I'll do that. As long as I know it's from you. Okay. And like I said, I was scared. I really was. I was very scared. It bothered me that I even prayed the prayer because I was scared. Well, about 2 months later, I met this young lady. And honestly, didn't think anything of it. I was introduced to her from a pastor, and I thought she was actually seeing the pastor. I wasn't even paying no attention. And ran into her again about a month later. And we was talking. We just happened to be talking and walking on the streets of Harlem. And the Spirit said, this is her. Just like that. This is her. I couldn't believe it. I went through a lot after that. It was like, I mean, that was like, say like February of 84. We got married in 84, December. And man, it was the hardest 9 or 10 months of my life because I kept praying, I kept praying, and he kept telling me, this is her. And I just couldn't believe it. It wouldn't be somebody I would pick for myself. But I remembered what I prayed. And I was convicted. I was convicted. Okay? And that's who I've been married to for 36 years. 36 years. Okay? I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I can tell you what, he was right. Because here I am 36 years later with the same woman. I've never cheated on her. I'm not saying it didn't cross my mind. I'm not saying it wasn't a temptation, but I'm fortunate that I never did that. Because he said, this is her. And I was convicted. Now, once that kind of thing happened, that conviction led me in because I asked to be guided. And it led me in a lot of times, just like that time. I was like, I couldn't believe I was breaking up with the first girl. I couldn't believe it. Matter of fact, I sent invitations to a wedding in that December, right? And my friends, a lot of my friends came. A lot of my boys from the hood, not the hood, but my neighborhood came. We called it the 4 blocks because it was like where we lived, we were on Long Island. And the segregated, y'all who grew up at that time know there's segregated neighborhoods. But there's no like it's not in the South where they say nigga don't come in here. It's no sign, but everybody knows where the border is. Okay. Everybody knows where the border is between the white neighborhood and the black neighborhood. You kind of know where it is. You don't have to, there's no sign there. But we lived in the black neighborhood and it was 4 blocks. It was 4 big blocks, 4 corners. So actually it was called 5 corners, but we called it the 4 blocks. So all my fellas from the 4 blocks came, right? And they were expecting to see the first girl. My boy, especially my boy, one of my homies said, "Yo, T, where's so and so, man? I thought you, who is this?" Because they got for sure me and the first girl was gonna be together. It won't be two. But the spirit said, "No, this is not her. Okay, this is not her." Now I don't know what would have happened if I stayed with that other girl. I do know what has happened since I married the one he told me was her. We've been together 36 years, raised 4 children. Okay, that's and to get we together now. I mean, obviously, right? So I do know that, and I do know that was important to me coming from a broken home myself. So definitely, I could say he led me, right, and that led to other convictions. I was an SDA at the time because I was convicted that I should go to that church. I met this woman in that church. But then later, and I was a fourth generation. It wasn't like Seventh Day Adventism was strange to me. My great grandfather in Jamaica was the first one, and then of course he had my grandmother. My grandmother had my mother, and and so I knew about SDA, way back. But then I was asking to be led, and I was convicted to leave that church. And that was also difficult because I had been, like I said, I was a fourth generation. But at that time, I was also convicted that this was the book. This was the book. And so I looked to this book as the standard of the truth. So whenever somebody would teach or preach, and at that time, I would be listening to people on TV, listening to people on the radio, listening to people in the church, I would compare everything to this book. Okay. And as I started learning of this book, and that's why I tell you, you can't just read a couple of pages or some chapters and say you read this thing. You got to read it through, man. If you're going to be honest with yourself, right? Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22:21, you got to read it through. Otherwise, you can't say you read it just because you read a gospel or you read a prophet. You can't say you read it. So I read it and prayed and asked for guidance, and I was shown this is the standard. Matter of fact, one day before I left the SDA church, myself, I became a member of an SDA church when I was 21 or 22 and stayed there for 25 years, something like that. 25, 30 years before I actually left. But I remember once I was in an SDA church, and there were certain people I used to like to hear preach, man. The spirit I would get excited when I hear certain preachers come. So there was this one brother, I liked him when he preached, and he stood up to preach one day. And I'm telling you, man, something just didn't feel right. And I couldn't believe it because I liked him, And I said, something, Gary preaching, but it don't sound right. Something don't sound right. And I didn't understand why it didn't sound right. The scriptures didn't sound right. The spirit didn't feel right. Come to find out, he was using a New International Version Bible. Come to find out later on, he was cheating on his wife. And that's why I think the spirit just wasn't feeling right. I didn't know all that at the time, but it didn't feel right. Then I took notes of the sermon and looked at all the scriptures he brought out and compared them to the King James. And they was messed up, man. They were messed up. I mean, it's one thing to change a word, but when you change the meaning, you change the doctrine, that's a problem. The Bible curses that. Adding to or taking away from the word, that's a curse both in Deuteronomy and the book of Revelation. So that's not cool. And my spirit was feeling that. So the first area, you have to be honest with yourself about the spirit. You got to be honest with yourself and be ready to be led by that spirit of conviction. It's going to lead you places, some places you wouldn't have gone if it was your choice. Like I wouldn't have broken up with my girlfriend if I wasn't convicted. I wouldn't have left the SDA church if I wasn't convicted. And that conviction led me to understand that this word is the standard. I then looked at the Good News Bible, the NIV Bible, the American Standard Bible, the New World Translation, the Clear Word. I done looked at all of them. And I couldn't understand for a long time why it was bothering me. All of those books were bothering me except this one, until I did more research, more study, more understanding, more study. All right. And when I studied, I started to understand. Most High was giving me understanding why. And that's one of the standards, one of the problems, one of the things I'm pointing out to you all right now. For example, the King James. I did a background on the King James Bible because the Jehovah's Witnesses, I studied with them. You know, when I first became an SD, I studied with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they were telling me King James was a homosexual, and so I couldn't trust that Bible, and that they had a better Bible, the New World Translation. So I did some studying on my own and found out that King James did not write the King James Bible. He authorized it to be completed, but he had nothing to do with the translation of this book. So therefore, whether he was a homosexual or not was irrelevant to the book. Therefore, I was now distrusting the Jehovah's Witnesses because they were giving me information to try to influence my mind based on falsehood. So King James was gay or not doesn't matter if the book, not only that, the book itself speaks against strongly homosexuality, right? In Leviticus chapter 18, very strong, death penalty, right? So even if he was gay, he spoke against himself. If he had anything to do with it, but he didn't. Then I understood that there was a Caucasian man named William Tyndale, and it was him that did this translation, but they used his writings because at the time they published this translation, he was dead. Why was he dead? Because he was translating it into English from Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew, and the Catholic Church was trying to find him to kill him. And they did find him, and they tortured him. They tortured him, and then they brought him out to the public and had people throw stuff at him while he was in stocks and beat him. Then they were burning him at the stake, and they were afraid what he was going to say, so they strangled him first at the stake, and then they burned him. And then after they burned him, they took his bones that was at the stake left and set them aside and burned them again. Somebody hated this man. And of all the other translations that are out here today, nobody else went through that. Nobody else went through that. Nobody that did the New World Translation or the Newest American Standard Bible or the New King James Bible or the New International Version or the Good. Nobody went through that, which in the spirit tells me somebody hated this man. Somebody hated this man. And they took his, and not only that, they tried every one of his Bibles that because he couldn't finish it. He didn't finish. He did about 80% of the translation of the Bible before they caught up with him and killed him. And so years later, matter of fact, his dying prayer before they strangled him was, "Open the King of England's eyes." That was his dying prayer. And that's where later the King of England, King James, said, "Finish this Bible in English." So they took William Tyndale's 80%, and then they got scholars in Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic, and they finished the other 20%. So that 80% of what you have as the King James is really Tyndale's word, Tyndale's translation, who was burned, strangled, and burned at the stake. Then his bones burned again. Okay. So then I wonder, well, why is all these other translations? Well, wouldn't it make sense that if you want to confuse people, to proliferate the world with translations that say different things, that don't say the same thing? Wouldn't that make sense? And then when you understand the workings of the Jesuit order and how most of these Bibles are inspired by people who are trained by them, then you understand. Okay? You understand. So now, since that time, and that's been a while now, the King James is the standard. So if somebody say, read the Apocrypha, okay, and I read it, but I'm comparing it to the standard of truth, which is the King James. Anything that somebody say, read, there's got to be a standard. If you don't have a standard, what are you measuring it against? You're just feeling it? So I have a standard. It's the King James Bible. Everything I read, everything I hear, everything somebody says, everything they preach or teach, I'm measuring it against this book. Okay? What else is a standard? Messiah is called the chief cornerstone, the foundation of the kingdom. Okay? He's called the chief cornerstone, the foundation. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 11. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Messiah Yahushua. He's called the chief cornerstone in Isaiah and in Peter. So therefore, he also would be under attack, would he not? Now, those of us that are Israelites understand, at least in part, the attack in one way, that his character was changed, his face was changed, his countenance was changed, his nationality was changed. They changed him to a Caucasian man from Europe, made him soft and flowery, right? They changed him for Christianity. We understand that's part of the attack. How would we know? Because we read the standard. And then they had to back that up by saying, oh, you only need to read the New Testament. That's the New Covenant. The Old Testament's done away. That's Old Covenant. Why would they do that? Because if you read it, you'll see the Messiah, how he really is, and who he really is. That's part of the attack. What else is a standard? Well, Messiah always said that he only does what his Father tells him, that he only operates as his Father has taught him, that every word he ever spoke was from his Father. Therefore, the Father is the standard. Messiah is a messenger of the Father. He's not the Father, but he's a messenger of the Father. Okay? That's why, in fact, in Malachi, it calls him the messenger of the covenant. Okay? So, that being the case, Father is a standard. And he's given Messiah as an example in his word. Matter of fact, Messiah is also called the Word made flesh. Why do I say all that? Because all the standards must agree. If the standards don't agree, you have confusion. So that if this Bible contradicts itself, I could throw it away because it's confusion. It's for somebody to contradict themselves. What do you call a person that constantly contradicts himself? A hypocrite? A liar? That would be true, wouldn't it? Politicians do it all the time. Joe Biden said, you're going to get $2,000 as soon as I get. Let's see. That boy was sworn in January. It's now March the 3rd. We ain't seen that 2,000. In fact, we ain't going to because he's now talking about 1,400. Oh, wait, we got 600 before. But see, that's what I'm saying. They constantly contradicting themselves. Oh, it's very important to me for we to have $15 minimum wage. Of course, he ain't tell you that was coming until 2025. They constantly contradict themselves. So we call them what? Liars. So now, if the Bible contradicts itself, it's got to be a liar. So now, I've heard many teachers, many preachers that give you scriptures. Even the former President Barack Obama actually said the Bible contradicts itself. So either he's a liar and a hypocrite, or the Bible is. I think I choose the Bible. But see, that's what I'm saying. We got to make a decision. What's the standard? What's the standard? What are you standing? What's your measurement? So now, whenever someone says a scripture contradicts the rest of the scriptures, or they seem to give a meaning to the scriptures that the rest of the scriptures don't give, for example, there's no law. There's Christians that teach there's no law. And once saved, you're always saved. Well, that kind of contradicts what the scripture says when it says the law is the truth. The law is righteousness. How could you do away with righteousness and truth? But they'll give you scriptures from the Apostle Paul, and they'll make those scriptures sound like there's no law. So now it used to confuse me, but now I understand the Bible does not contradict itself. So therefore, either they're misreading it, right? Or it's not true, or the Bible does contradict itself. I choose to believe they are misreading it. Therefore, my goal is to find out how it harmonizes. Because my hypothesis, my understanding is it doesn't contradict itself. And there are many preachers and teachers that will, and they don't always come out like Barack Obama did and say stuff like that, but they will, what's the word I'm looking for? They will imply it. They will suggest it. You understand? They will imply and suggest that it contradicts itself without actually saying that. And that's what the devil does also. And that drives me crazy. Just come out and say what you're trying to say. Don't imply and suggest stuff. But that's one of my pet peeves. People do that. They send me emails and they try to imply and suggest without actually just coming out and saying what they, the Apostle Paul words are not inspired scripture. Why don't you just come out and say that if you believe it? Because you know why they won't? Because you know what I'll say? Well, keep it moving. I believe it is. End of discussion. You keep it moving. You don't believe it? Go. See? That's what I'm saying. I don't have time to argue and debate about my conviction. You understand? If you're convicted about something, that's what it is, man. And see, this is the thing. You got to be honest with yourself. If there is a judgment, and if all of us are going to face it, man, you better be sure that you're being honest with yourself. Because when you're standing in the face of the Messiah on the day of judgment, you can't lie to him. Even the devil can't lie to him. He's going to bow that day and say that Messiah is master. He's going to do that. He's going to bow that day and say Most High is the Most High. He's going to do that before he's thrown in the lake. You can't lie in the face of the divine truth and righteousness of an eternal Most High. So you better be honest with yourself now. Because if you start deceiving yourself, boy, you're really in trouble. And we've seen that too. People start to push lies and push them so hard. The ex-president Donald Trump was pushing this election was fraudulent. I really won. Now, I don't trust government. I don't trust the voting machines. I don't trust none of that. But I ain't going to say Donald Trump really won. But he kept pushing that. Why? Because he was desperate to stay in office. Desperate to stay in office. Okay? And so desperate and so hard he was pushing it that he started believing it himself. Now, that's a lost soul right there. Pushing lies to the point where you start to believe it. And that's part of the strong delusion that the scriptures talk about. You'll be damned, he said, because you refuse to believe the truth but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So now he's going to cause you to believe a lie. So I don't want to be in that position. I want to follow my convictions honest and sincere. I want to follow the truth. And I need standards. Well, the Bible is a standard. Messiah is a standard. The Father is a standard. What else is a standard? The covenant between Father and his people is a standard. Let's take a look in Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20, beginning at verse 1. And Yah spake all these words, saying, conviction, first off, you have to understand that there's a God, and he spoke these words. He did not speak through Moses in this particular situation. He spoke, and people heard with their own ears what he said. And there were over 1 million witnesses to that at that time, 600,000 men, not including women and children. So you had over 1 million witnesses hear him speak these words. Yah spake all these words, saying, what did he say? Verse 2, I am Yahweh, thy most high, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. He introduces himself to the nation. He wasn't speaking to Babylonians. He wasn't speaking to Mizraim, Egyptians, or any Hamites. He wasn't speaking to the children of Yafet. He wasn't speaking to Germans or Irish or Polish. Nope. According to this word, he spoke to the people that he brought out of the house of bondage, out of Mizraim, out of slavery. He was talking to them. Conviction. Verse 3, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Again, the attack then would be to doubt this. The attack would be, there's other gods? He wasn't just speaking to those people. That's the attack that Asatan must bring on here, because here is a standard. Here's another standard. Of all the trees of the garden, you can freely eat. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you may not eat of it, because the day you eat thereof, you're going to surely die. That's truth. If you believe in the Creator, and if you believe this word to be a standard, that's truth then. And so the attack on that truth in the spiritual war was, you shall not surely die. If you eat of this tree, you're going to be a god. That's the opposite in the attack on the truth. So you must have a standard. Are you going to believe Adam? Are you going to believe your creator, Adam? Are you going to believe the one that created you from the dust of the earth and what he told you, or not? All of us have that choice. And all of us are going to be judged, I believe, on what we followed in terms of our convictions of our conscience. So that if you are consciously convicted that something is wrong and you still stand for the wrong, you're going to have a problem. In my conviction, I'm teaching, you're going to have a problem. That's why I can't judge a guy like a Martin Luther, a German that wasn't a Hebrew, that didn't even teach the Sabbath. I can't judge him because I don't know what he knew. I know that he had been raised up in over 1,000 years of established order of Roman Catholic doctrine. How could I judge this man? I'm in no position. So I don't know if he's going to be in the first resurrection or the second resurrection. It's not for me. All I can know is what the truth is that I know. I can't judge Malcolm X. I don't know what he knew. But my spirit is convicted that he was sincere. My spirit's convicted. When I hear him talk, I'm convicted. This man was sincere. This man was following what he was convicted on to be true. And when he was disappointed in Elijah Muhammad, because he had put all his trust in him, and he was disappointed at the things that he had been witness to, or that he was told from the young women that were impregnated by this man, he came out with it. He came out with it and said, this is why I can't follow them anymore, he said. He was convicted. Now, his convictions caused him to be put to death. Well, that's kind of a pattern with people that follow truth. Like William Tyndale. That's kind of a pattern because we're in a spiritual war. So the Spirit convicts us when we're honest. But then in my case, and I'm telling y'all, it leads you to his word because the Bible says he magnifies his word above all his name. It says that. And it says, order my steps in your word. And he says, let not any iniquity have dominion over me. So the Most High leads us to the word. And how important is that? As I'm convicted of this word, I'm reminded of the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. You remember that parable of Lazarus and the rich man? You remember that parable? So here's Lazarus. He's outside on the street begging, right? Got sores and on it all over him, and dogs are licking the sores, right? And here's the rich man. The rich man is living, the Bible says, sumptuously. He's living large. Got servants, got handmaids, got everything he wants, man. He's not missing anything. Bible say they both died. And it says Lazarus went to Abraham's bosom, but the rich man was just barren and ended up in flames. What the parable says. Now it's a parable. It's a message. That doesn't mean that's really what happens. A parable is a story with a point. Now, when you look at this parable and you see the rich man and Lazarus, then the rich man says, I'm looking for it as I'm telling you, the rich man says, please send Lazarus over here with some water because he said, it's hot over here where I'm at. And Abraham says, no, in your time you had good things and Lazarus had suffered bad things. He said, no, Lazarus can't come over there and you can't come over here where we are. Okay, he said, well then, he said, send Lazarus to my brothers. He said, because my brothers, I don't want them to end up here with me. And then Abraham says, no, he says, this is the point of the parable. He says, they have Moses and the prophets. He said, let them hear them. And the rich man said, nay, Father Abraham. He said, but if, here it is Luke 16. He said, no, Father Abraham. He said, but if one rose from the dead, they'll believe him. Wait, let's look at it. Luke chapter 16. I'm going to start at verse 24, since I told you most of it already. But let's start at verse 24. And he cried, said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. And beside all this, between us and you, there was a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from thence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that should come from thence. Then he said, I pray thee therefore, Father, that thou wouldest send him to my father's house. For I have 5 brethren, that he may testify unto them, lest they also come into this place of torment. Abraham said unto him, they have Moses and the prophets. Let them hear them. And he said, nay, Father Abraham, but if one went unto them from the dead, they will repent. And he said unto him, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. And that, brethren, is speaking of the importance of the word of the Most High as a standard. That even the resurrection of Messiah will not convict people to follow the truth if they will not hear his word. You must hear his word. And I know that many times, more times than I can remember, more times than I can count, I prayed to the Father and say, Father, I don't understand this verse. See, I don't never say this verse is wrong or this sounds stupid. That's disrespect. You don't tell your teacher you sound stupid if he's your teacher. So I say, Father, I don't understand this. Please help me to see, because I don't understand. Sometimes he'll show me a couple of days later, right away. Sometimes a long time. Sometimes he just say, wait. But that's how I learn, because I say, I don't understand this word. I'm reading something and I don't understand it. See, in human terms, in this world, we don't admit we don't understand something. Or when we say we don't understand, we go to other humans to get understanding, right? But very few people will go to their father. If the thing is written through the spirit of the Father, why don't you ask him? That's what I do. Say, Father, I don't understand this. Can you show me? I don't get this. And he does. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes right away, sometimes down the road, but he shows me. And then he'll show me, for example, in the book of Revelation, I often would come to him with that one and say, I don't understand this. Please show me this. And like some of y'all will go to my church, go to my SDA church. What does this mean? And I get different reasons, different answers, and telling me to read Ellen White and James White, and it just didn't feel right. But then as time went on, slowly, he would reveal things to me about the book of Revelation. And then I began to understand, which I want to share with you right now. He is doing just that. He's expanding and opening the curtain of truth slowly. And as we get closer to the establishment of the kingdom, he will show us more truth. There are things that he don't want us to know. Remember, Messiah told his disciples, there are things I want to share with you, but I can't share them. You're not ready for them now. And that's how Father treats us. And that's how he shows us in the book of Revelation. He shows us all kinds of things. Years ago, I didn't know and understand that the feasts were also signs, and that the last feast to be fulfilled as a sign is the Feast of Tabernacles, and that also shows the return of the Messiah in the autumn. 20 years ago, I couldn't tell you that, but he has revealed that. As we get closer, he'll reveal more about it. And now I understand that now. So that when I come to the book of Revelation, there's something I don't understand, I'll ask the Father, but I also understand that as time goes on, he'll reveal more when I'm ready, when we're ready. But I have a standard, the conviction of his spirit and his word. I have a standard, the covenant between him and his people, that he wants his people to reveal to the earth, that he has designed, that his people who he spoke that standard to should reveal that to the earth in its proper context and light. I'm convicted that that's the case. And I don't want to fight the conviction, because then I'm fighting against my own self and my Father. So that now, when I see a proliferation of different Bible translations, I understand what's going on. It's the devil trying to confuse the people. When I see all these different Christian churches, all of them saying they're the truth and they all speaking different things, I understand where that's coming from. Okay? When I understand who Judas is, that he was a black man, an Israelite that betrayed Messiah, I can see black preachers standing up with all kind of emotion and getting all people all riled up and saying nothing. Saying nothing. I can see it. Why? Because the Father has shown me standards whereby everything that's said or spoken or taught is measured against those standards. Somebody say, read the Apocrypha. Okay. And I can see Catholic doctrines. Why? Because there's measured against the standard. Some people say, but there's truth in there. Absolutely. There's some very true statements, lots of them in the Apocrypha. Absolutely. But I wouldn't put my trust in things that are partially true. I've learned that there's something that's 100% true. And I keep my eyes on the standard. Now you have to go according to your conviction. You have to ask the Father for yourself to convict you, to show you standards. And you got to stick by those standards of measurement that he gives you as to what is true. And when you do, you will not be confused. nor will you be deceived unless you want to be. Eve wanted to be deceived. She wanted to be a goddess. He said, you could be a god. What? Okay, I want that. She went for it. Okay, so you will, that's also something I've learned. Most people that are not following truth are being deceived based on their own heart's desires and lusts, whether it be money or power or prestige or recognition. The devil will use any and all of these and many more things to get you to accept a lie and to defend it based on your own self because you want to be exalted, you want to be right, you want to be the one. Really, that's just another form of you want to be God. Okay, and a lot of people falling for it, multiple millions and billions. But he will also send you convictions of truth. It's up to you to decide whether you're going to receive that or not. I know my conscience is totally clear. I can say that honestly because, and I'm not saying I know everything, but I'm saying this: when my conscience convicted, I end up going that way. Been doing it for a while now, and yeah, I fought it lots of times, and he bring me back to it because at the end of the day, I'm following him. I told my wife that I said, I'm gonna mess up. I said, but at the end of the day, Father knows me. He knows I'm gonna come back to him because he has spanked me so many times. I have caught that belt a lot of times, brethren. And so, it's not about money. It's not about. That's why when this ministry was started, after a while, I used to receive tithes from people, but I stopped. He convicted me for what? What you get money from people for? I got you. You got a job. You could work. What they need to send you money for? Then I've seen how money is corrupting all these ministries, corrupting them, corrupting all these so-called churches. That it's all about the money. I said, nah, it's got to be about the Father. I'm convicted. It's got to be about him. The glory has got to be his alone. Can't be mine and his. It's got to be his. Yeah. Like I said, man, there was a time in my life, man, I was out here looking for another woman. I was. I admit it. I was trying, man. It was maybe 20 years ago, but I was like, man, I need me somebody else. I'm tired of this one. But you know what happened? I would get on my knees and say, Father, I'm just telling you, Father, what I want. I'm going to follow what you show me. But I'm telling you what I want. I was being honest. I said, I want another woman. And he convicted me. No. I had people that I didn't even know walking up to me saying, I'm telling you, walking up to a woman, I had a dream. You're not supposed to be here. You must be somebody's. You're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be here. I had dreams from brethren too. I had a dream that I saw X, Y, and Z, and that was telling me, Father was showing me, no, I don't want you doing this. So I didn't. But I went to him with it. I went to him and said, this is what I want. You understand? You got to do the same thing. You got to be honest with him, honest with yourself, and have a standard whereby you know what the measurement is. And in my case, by the grace of Most High, I have his word, his spirit, the covenant, Messiah. He has also given me dreams, and I'm sure some of y'all can testify. He's showing you things in dreams. But I will also say, I heard some of y'all tell me your dreams, and I'm gonna tell you something about dreams. He will show you stuff, and that doesn't necessarily mean you understand it right away. You will eventually understand it, but don't think always you understand it right away. I see people get dreams, and I believe they get the dream, but they're misinterpreting what they're getting because they're trying to, just because they gave it to you last night, don't mean you're going to understand it this morning. I've had dreams that were, happened over years. And later I understood. I thought I understood at first, but later I understood it. And I've learned over time to wait. Wait before you start predicting what your dream says, man, because you'll be wrong. And then he'll show you what it means later, and you'll realize you were wrong. You understand? So, but that's another way of getting a standard and conviction. I also will receive dreams. Now, sometimes the way the dreams are, He showed me something like, for example, over the course of decades, I realized whenever I have a dream where I'm naked, it means that somebody, not necessarily me, but somebody's going to be exposed. Something that I didn't know about somebody's going to come out when I get a dream that I'm naked. And that's happened every time. It doesn't happen right away. Usually within that year, something happens and my eyes are open to somebody. Usually something's exposed. Or if I have a dream, I'm getting ready to marry somebody. That means I'm getting ready to connect with somebody. And the reason I know this is because I've had it so many times over different situations over many decades. So I've learned what that is. So when I get ready to marry somebody, I'm getting ready to connect with something. And in some dreams, I'm supposed to marry it. In some dreams, I'm not supposed to marry it. And when it's something I'm not supposed to marry, I realize something I'm either going to connect or somebody connected with me that I need to leave alone. But that's just example, see? But it happens over time and experience. You can't just, do it just like this, man. But these are more standards, and these are all protections. That's what the standards are. Protections against deceit. Because the Bible says the devil deceiveth the whole world. And we need protections against deceit. You understand? That's the most high way of protecting those that he loves. He gives us these standards of righteousness. Okay, there are more, but I think you got the point for tonight. What I'm trying to convey by the Spirit of the Most High. May He guide you so that you recognize the standards of righteousness. May He guide you so that not only do you recognize, trust in them, believe them, so that you don't get deceived. Shalom.